all know, is a very stressful job and involves monitoring 6 different computer screens. I think we're up to 8 different radio frequencies, multiple agencies, as I noted earlier. And it requires them to be able to have space that's comfortable enough for them to continue operating in a professional and calm manner. And generally they're dealing with a public that's experiencing some form of stress or trauma in their life. Dispatchers are assigned to their consoles during their 12-hour work week. I think that's worth noting. They're at the console for 12 hours each shift, and making it all even more important to make sure that that space is adequate and comfortable for them to work. It is the belief of the management team that the current configuration in the limited space isn't adequate to accommodate the current staff and completely limits the ability for potential future expansion. And I think we need to be looking at future expansion at all times. Staff initially believed that the center, the expansion might be covered through the transition of the center to a shared facility with the library. However, we don't know where that's gonna go, and that option may not be feasible, or it may be feasible, but I'm kind of looking at today. As of January 3rd, at January 3rd at the URA meeting, I proposed this and the reconfiguration, the remodel option within the existing walls of the police department. The option will increase the space to a comfortable size that could comfortably accommodate our 4 consoles, with the ability to expand to a total of 6 consoles in that main set. In that main center. The proposal also included the 6 new consoles. We would put the 4 in the main center, 2 would go into the dispatch supervisor's office, and then if we needed to expand, we would move those 2 consoles back into the main center and just purchase different equipment for the dispatch supervisor so we could accommodate all 6. And we believe that this space would make the 12-hour shifts manageable. Again, it would be able to accommodate all 6 consoles if need be. At that conclusion of that meeting, the URA Board unanimously approved the project for the amount of $250,000. Staff immediately began working through details and hired ZCS to provide architectural and engineering services for the project. Once the plan was completed, staff began the bidding process, and we received only 2 bids or proposals back from 2 construction contractors. And then one of the bids came from Richard's Remodel from Eugene, Oregon, for the amount of $222,422. And the second came from Tom Gajewski Construction for the amount of $192,999. We also received quote from the Zybex console company for the 6 consoles and a locker system to accommodate staff for $141,846.28. This company was selected due to the console's adaptability and configurations, and it met the requirements in our limited configuration, even in our new space, and it also they were adequately equipped for the needs that our dispatchers need. The additional costs associated with the project was permits, engineering costs, electrical, and just some miscellaneous other components needed to complete the project. That's what makes up the entire amount that I had mentioned earlier. It also should be noted that the project was valued at $115,000 from ZCS. However, the 2 bids that we received didn't support that valuation estimate. And we believe the reason behind that is there's an increase over the initial amount due to the higher costs associated with the 6 consoles. They came in a little bit higher than what we had anticipated, as well as the increased materials cost, labor cost, and the additional fire egress code requirements to accommodate the proposed changes within the building. And I can elaborate on that a little bit more if you guys would like me to. The budget implications for this, the total project is $420,000, $420,287.63, which includes that 15% contingency of $33,292.35. And staff is requesting this project be funded by the URA budget, which has been confirmed to have the capacity for these additional costs due to the unanticipated carryover. And so if it pleases council, we are requesting approval of an increase of the URA funds from the previously discussed amount of $250,000 to the $420,287.63, which includes that contingency. We are requesting to award the construction contract to Tom Gajewski for the reconfiguration and remodel of the North Coos 911 Dispatch Center for $192,999, and the approval of the 6 dispatch consoles for $141,846.28. And I am open for any questions that you may have.
Okay, do we have any questions?
Could I, Mr. McClintock, could I read a motion and have it say including? Because I assume both of those sub-requests are included in the overall price.
Yes, the overall cost is the $420,000.
And that includes the contract to Mr. Gajewski and the purchase of the Zybex machines.
Yes, and where I got, just so I can explain, where we got the $33,292.35 contingency fund is we broke down the project and we're only asking for the 15% contingency on the construction portion of the project, not the consoles. That's a locked-in quote. But we all know construction, sometimes you tear into something and you realize that there's an added cost.
So, and then my second thing is, and I suppose this is a pretty broad statement, but is the idea of a county-wide 911 center completely dead?
I wouldn't say it's completely dead. I would say at this point right now, the chances of that, all of us coming together and consolidating is fairly difficult for a couple reasons. They're on different records management systems than we are. And we have attempted that several times, I think 7 times in my careers,
right.
My career here. But I wouldn't say that it's ever off the table. I mean, maybe that's something that down the road we discuss.
So even if that was something we could work out, it would take some time, and these changes would be necessary to get us up to speed today.
Absolutely. And
okay.
even with this, you know, even if that discussion occurred, we'd probably have to also talk about location. Where is that dispatcher going to be, dispatch center going to be placed? With this proposed remodel, it could potentially, we could be a contender, where right now, I don't believe we could accommodate that.
Thank you very much.
I think when we originally talked about this and the mayor and I were there to take the tour of the center when this came up for discussion, was the ability to have some capacity to meet the needs that we have, and at the time knowing that we were going into handling the calls, but also that there was a potential. And the facility that they're in it's compacted. I mean, there's just really hardly any room for movement in there, so.
Yeah.
And if I can add, we've had some change in council since we were talking about this, and there was people given the opportunity to walk through the center. And I think if you saw that space, you'd have a good understanding why, although there could be potential for a future combination, it's really crucial we do something today for the folks that are working in that really confined space.
Chief, I appreciate your thoroughness in your explanation, reminding us that the dispatchers work in a highly stressful situation, and they're in that space for 12 hours. I think we all agree that this is something that we need to do. So with that said, if it pleases the council, I'm willing to read this really long motion. I will make a motion to approve an increase in URA funds from the previously discussed amount of $250,000 to $420,000, $287.63, which includes a 15% contingency amount of $33,292.35, in addition to award construction contract to Tom Gajowski Construction for the reconfiguration and remodel of the North Coos 911 Dispatch Center for $192,999, and finally approved the purchase of 6 dispatch consoles and lockers for Zybex for the amount of $141,846.28. This price is included in the total project price of $420,287.63.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve an increase in the URA funds from the previously discussed amount of $250,000 to $420,287.63, and I'm not going to read all the portions of that, and a second to go with that motion. Any further discussion?
Yes, I have a question. Does this remove the need to have the continued conversation around the 911 center being paired with the new library?
Well, I think that would be probably up to you guys in terms of if you wanted to keep that on the table. I think if that levy does pass, and we do look at that, we're still looking at maybe a long-term move. So we're still trying to figure out something to bridge that gap for, let's say, 3 to 5 years if that did happen. And I think location is going to play a key factor in whether or not it would be a viable location for the dispatch center to be relocated. I think we'd probably have to cross that bridge when we get there.
And also, Chief, the consoles would be able to be relocated, correct?
Yes, and so, a big portion of this cost is equipment that we will be able to relocate and reconfigure to a new space. And again, it's also considering some future expansion possibilities or needs.
And I would advocate what Chair Kilmer and also our City Manager Nicole suggested, that you get a chance, you should take a tour through there and really get an understanding of what's being done and necessary, anyway.
And I would just add one additional thing. I think the changes that we're making in that space, even if dispatch was to move from that in 3 years, it's usable in other ways, because we do find we're running out of space with just our officers. So there are opportunities to rethink its use.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, vote aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Oh, there he is. I didn't see you up there, Carmen. Did you have any further discussion?
I don't, no, everything sounds great.
Okay. All those opposed? Nay? Motion carries unanimously. And with that, we have no further.
Can I make one comment?
Sure.
That I didn't get a chance to make, I'm sorry. I know, I'm sorry. We had this discussion, Nicole and myself, and I think it's important to bring up that Elm Avenue, which is a street that we didn't even realize, because the Front Street blueprint plan didn't even recognize this, is going to be an issue, and is an issue with the property owners. I'm proposing that we think about vacating it, and so that's a suggestion. The city manager suggested I bring that up at the council. Unfortunately, I did not meeting, so I'm bringing it up at the renewal meeting. Anyway, I think it's something we should think about doing.
So will we get more information at the next meeting if the council wants to consider this?
We can certainly do that. We can provide you with a staff report that gives you the options of how that could walk forward.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right.
All right, anything further? No other business to come before this body. We are adjourned.